All right, everybody, get ready because today we're diving headfirst into the latest long COVID research.
Yeah, we've got a lot to unpack.
We do. And, it really is like piecing together a giant puzzle.
Right. Totally. And like any good puzzle, there are a lot of pieces we're still trying to figure out.
Exactly. And one of the biggest mysteries is what's causing long COVID in the first place.
Right.
We've been hearing a lot about the possibility of the virus sticking around even after that initial infection clears.
Yeah, the lingering virus theory.
Yes. But if that's the case, where is it hiding?
Well, that is the million-dollar question, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's been a lot of really interesting research lately pointing to possible viral reservoirs.
Viral reservoirs?
Yeah, and the gut in particular is looking like a prime suspect.
The gut, you mean like our stomachs?
Exactly. Some studies are finding viral RNA in gut tissue up to 600 days after infection.
Wait, 600 days? That's almost 2 years.
Yeah.
You're telling me this virus is like that one friend who overstays their welcome at a party?
More like a house guest who knows how to dodge those eviction notices.
Okay, I see what you mean. But how does it survive in the gut for so long? What makes it such a good hiding spot?
Well, one theory is that it has something to do with the gut microbiome.
The gut microbiome. Okay, now you're just using big words to sound smart.
No, seriously. You see, the gut microbiome is this complex community of bacteria that lives in our intestines.
Right, I've heard of that.
And it turns out it plays a critical role in how our immune systems respond to things like viruses.
Interesting.
Yeah. And in the case of long COVID, some researchers believe that the gut microbiome might actually be, well, sort of protecting the virus.
Protecting it. How so?
It's possible that the gut microbiome might be inadvertently helping the virus fly under the radar of our immune system.
Okay, so the virus is like a master of disguise, hiding out in the gut, blending in with all the other microbes.
Exactly. And to make matters even trickier, the way this virus persists might actually differ depending on where it's hiding in the body.
Oh, that makes sense.
For instance, there's been some research, albeit in mice, but with human-like immune systems, suggesting that while the virus might initially replicate in the lungs.
Right, which is where it usually starts.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But then it seems like it tends to go into this kind of stealth mode in the gut.
So sneaky. But okay, let's talk about those long COVID symptoms that affect the brain for a second.
Yeah, of course, like brain fog.
Brain fog is a big one. So is the virus setting up shop in the brain too?
That's a huge question. And while there's not a ton of evidence to suggest direct viral infection of the brain, at least not in the long term,
Okay.
there's definitely a growing body of evidence pointing to something called neuroinflammation.
Neuroinflammation. Okay, for those of us who don't speak fluent science, what does that even mean?
Essentially, neuroinflammation means that your brain's immune system is activated.
Oh, like it's on high alert?
Exactly, like it's ready for a fight.
But if there's no virus, what's it fighting?
Well, that's the thing. It could be triggered by a few things. It could be those lingering viral proteins we talked about earlier.
Oh, right, those sneaky little things.
Yeah, imagine them like smoke signals left behind even after the fire's out.
So even though the initial infection is gone, those proteins are still causing a ruckus.
Exactly. And it might not even be the actual virus or its proteins directly causing the problem in the brain. Sometimes our own immune response can go a bit haywire.
Oh, wow. So it's like our bodies are attacking themselves.
In a way, yes. It's like the immune system is so busy fighting that it accidentally starts causing damage to healthy tissue.
Wow, that's kind of scary.
It is a little bit, but the more we understand about how all of this works, the better equipped we'll be to treat it.
That's a great point. So even if the virus itself isn't directly infecting the brain, it can still wreak havoc in other ways.
Exactly. It's like a ripple effect.
So how do researchers even know that these viral proteins are still hanging around if they can't always find the virus itself?
They're using some pretty amazing technology.
Like what?
Well, one example is something called a Simoa assay.
A Simoa assay. Never heard of it.
It's super sensitive. Basically, imagine a microscope so powerful that it can detect even the tiniest traces of those viral proteins in things like blood samples.
Wow, so they're like detectives dusting for fingerprints at a crime scene.
Exactly. They're looking for any little clue that the virus might have left behind.
That's incredible. But just to be clear, finding these proteins doesn't automatically mean someone has an active infection, right?
You're absolutely right. It's not like having the flu where you're definitely sick. Think of it more like, how can I explain that? Okay, imagine a campfire. Even after the flames die down, you still have those embers, right?
Right, still hot under the surface.
Exactly. And given the right conditions, those embers could even reignite the fire. So these proteins are like those embers. They're not a full-blown infection like you experienced at the beginning, but they have the potential to cause ongoing inflammation and contribute to those frustrating long COVID symptoms.
So even though the initial infection might be a distant memory for some people, those lingering embers can still cause trouble.
That's a great way to put it. And, it's not just the initial virus we have to worry about either.
Oh, no. What else?
Researchers are finding that other viruses, like the Epstein-Barr virus,
Epstein-Barr. Isn't that the one that causes mono?
the one and only. And it seems like in some people with long COVID, this virus, which can lie dormant in our bodies for years, might get reactivated.
Wait, you're saying that getting COVID could potentially mess with other viruses already lurking in my system?
It's a possibility that researchers are looking into very seriously. And this just goes to show how complex and interconnected this whole thing really is.
You're telling me. This is a lot to take in.
It is, and we've only just scratched the surface.
Oh, there's more.
Oh, yeah. We haven't even gotten to the immune system itself yet and how it might be contributing to all of this.
Well, don't leave us in suspense. Let's talk about the immune system. Okay, so we're talking about the immune system. This feels big.
It is. Key to the whole long COVID puzzle.
And possibly the key to figuring out treatment, too.
Yeah. At it. And, it's really fascinating stuff, even if I do say so myself.
Well, you're the expert. So walk us through it. What's going on with the immune system in long COVID? What are the researchers seeing?
So think of your immune system like an army.
Okay, I like it.
All right, so you've got all these different soldiers, right? And those are your immune cells. And each type of cell has a specific job to do to fight off those invaders, like viruses.
Makes sense.
Now, one of the really important players in this army, these are the T cells.
T cells.
And in some, but not all, long COVID patients, researchers are finding that these T cells are acting a bit, off.
Off. In what way? Are they not doing their jobs?
Kind of, but it's complicated. It's not the same in every case of long COVID. In some people, those T cells seem to be stuck in overdrive, like they're constantly on high alert, pumping out inflammatory signals.
Oh, so they're like those soldiers who never really come home from the war. They're still on edge all the time.
That's a great way to put it. They're stuck in fight mode, even though the initial threat is gone.
And what does that do to the body?
Well, all that constant inflammation, it can be really damaging. It can actually start to harm healthy tissues and organs.
Yeah.
And that can lead to some of those lingering long COVID symptoms people experience.
So in some cases, it's like the immune system is attacking the body it's supposed to be protecting.
Exactly. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you have folks with long COVID whose T cells seem to be, they're just exhausted.
Exhausted, like they've just run out of steam.
Exactly. Like they put up a good fight, but now they're completely spent, burned out.
And what happens when the T cells are too tired to do their jobs?
Well, if those T cells aren't working properly, it becomes much harder for your body to fight off any new infections that might come along.
So these folks are more likely to get sick.
Unfortunately, yes. Their immune systems are just worn out from the initial battle with the virus.
Wow, that's a double whammy, isn't it? First you have the virus itself, and then you have the immune system either going into overdrive or completely crashing.
It's like the body just can't catch a break.
It's tough. But the good news is at least researchers are starting to understand these immune system quirks, right?
Exactly. And that understanding is what's going to lead us to better treatments.
Okay, so let's talk about those treatments. What's on the horizon? What are scientists doing to calm down this immune system chaos?
Well, one really promising avenue is anti-inflammatory drugs.
So like ibuprofen or something?
Well, it could be something like that, or it could be more targeted medications. But basically, the idea is to dampen down that overactive immune response.
So turn down the volume on all that inflammation.
Precisely. And there are some other really exciting areas of research, too. For instance, scientists are looking at ways to actually use the immune system itself to target those lingering viral proteins we talked about earlier.
Now that's interesting. How do they do that?
One approach is to develop vaccines specifically designed to target those pesky proteins.
So instead of going after the whole virus, they're creating a vaccine for just a piece of it.
You got it. It's like,
Yeah.
imagine you're trying to catch a criminal, right?
Yeah.
And you have their fingerprint. You don't need to know everything about them, just that one key piece of information to track them down. So these vaccines, they're like a wanted poster with a picture of that viral protein on it.
I like that analogy. So it's showing the immune system exactly what to look for.
Exactly. It's saying, this is the bad guy, round him up.
Love it. What about those exhausted T cells? Anything that can be done to help them?
That's another area of active research. There are some therapies being investigated that might actually be able to reboot those tired T cells.
Reboot them, like restarting a computer.
Exactly. Give them the energy they need to get back to work and start fighting off infections again.
That would be a game changer for a lot of people.
It absolutely would. Now, we've talked a lot about the immune system, but we can't forget about those viral reservoirs. Researchers are working hard to find ways to clear out the virus from those hiding places, too.
Any promising leads on that front?
There are. Remember how we were talking about the gut being a potential viral hideout?
Yes, hard to forget that image.
Well, researchers are looking into antiviral drugs that are specifically designed to reach those reservoirs.
So if they can get those antivirals to the right spot, they might actually be able to clear out the virus for good.
That's the hope. And it's not just antiviral medications either. Remember those microclots we touched on earlier?
The tiny blood clots, yes.
Well, it seems those might be playing a role in some long COVID symptoms as well, and researchers are exploring treatments that could target those too.
So it's like a multi-pronged approach, going after the virus, calming down the immune system, tackling those microclots.
Exactly. It's a complex problem, so it's going to require a multifaceted solution.
It's amazing how much progress has been made in such a short time, though.
I know, right? It
Yeah.
really is remarkable. But there's one more thing I want to touch on, something that I think is incredibly exciting.
Oh, don't leave me hanging. What is it?
Well, all of this research into long COVID, it's not just helping us understand this one condition.
What do you mean?
It's giving us incredible insights into other chronic illnesses too, things that we've been trying to figure out for years.
Okay, now I'm really intrigued. What other chronic illnesses are we talking about, and how is long COVID research shedding light on them?
Well, a lot of the symptoms we see in long COVID, like the fatigue, brain fog, muscle aches, they're also really common in other complex conditions.
Right.
And one that comes to mind right away, myalgic encephalomyelitis chronic fatigue syndrome.
MECFS. Yeah.
Exactly. And MECFS. It's been a real mystery for a long time.
It has. People have been struggling with it for years, and it feels like we still don't have a lot of answers.
We really don't. It's been incredibly challenging to diagnose and treat because we haven't really known what causes it.
And that's where long COVID research comes in.
Exactly. You see, with long COVID, we often have a clear starting point, infection with the COVID-19 virus.
Right, which you don't always have with something like MECFS. It can just seem to come out of nowhere.
Exactly. So with long COVID, researchers can actually study how a viral infection might lead to these chronic debilitating symptoms we see in MECFS too.
So that's what you meant about having a smoking gun.
Precisely. It gives researchers this unique opportunity to track what's happening in the body right from the start.
Fascinating. So are there any concrete examples of how long COVID research is helping us understand MECFS better?
Absolutely. Remember those T-cell abnormalities we talked about earlier? The ones that are showing up in long COVID?
Yes, the overactive ones and the exhausted ones.
Well, guess what? Similar immune system dysfunctions have also been observed in people with MECFS.
So it could be the same underlying mechanism at work.
That's what researchers are trying to figure out. And this is just one example. There are other potential overlaps they're investigating too.
Like what? Give me another example.
Well, there's something called postural orthostatic tachycardia syndrome, or POTS for short.
POTS. I've heard of that, but I don't really know what it is.
It's a condition that affects your heart rate and blood pressure regulation when you stand up.
Oh, okay.
And it's been showing up in a subset of long COVID patients. And interestingly, it's also something that's sometimes seen in people with MECFS. So again, it's like a clue, right?
Yeah.
Maybe these conditions share some common underlying causes.
It's pretty amazing how this research is connecting these seemingly different conditions.
It really is.
Yeah.
It's like long COVID research is pulling on a thread that's unraveling mysteries we've been struggling with for years.
It's like long COVID is, unfortunately, giving us this unexpected window into these other chronic illnesses.
Exactly. It's a silver lining, albeit a bittersweet one. But, it's not just about understanding existing illnesses. Long COVID research is also leading to the development of really cool new tools and technologies.
New tools and technologies, like what?
Well, one area that I'm particularly excited about is molecular imaging.
Molecular imaging. Okay, you're losing me a little bit. What is that?
Imagine being able to actually see the immune system in action.
See it. Like visually.
Yes. We can track those T cells as they move through the body. We can pinpoint areas of inflammation.
Whoa. That sounds kind of like science fiction.
I know, right? But it's becoming a reality. Researchers are using techniques like PE scans, but with a really cool twist.
What's the twist?
They're tagging specific molecules or cells with radioactive tracers.
So they're like little glowing beacons that show up on the scan.
Exactly. We can see exactly where they are and what they're doing.
That's incredible. So how does this help with long COVID treatment specifically?
Well, for one, it can help us confirm if those viral proteins really are hiding out in certain tissues, and if so, where they are.
It's like getting visual confirmation instead of just guessing.
Exactly. And it can also help us see if the treatments we're using, like those antiviral drugs, are actually reaching those viral reservoirs.
That makes so much sense.
And the best part, these advances in molecular imaging, they're not just going to benefit people with long COVID.
You think this could have implications for other diseases too?
Absolutely. This technology has the potential to revolutionize the way we diagnose and treat a whole range of conditions.
Wow, this is really incredible stuff. When we started this deep dive, honestly, I was feeling a little overwhelmed, a little disheartened by all the unknowns surrounding long COVID.
I hear that it's a lot to wrap your head around.
It is. But now I'm actually feeling hopeful, not just for the future of long COVID treatment, but for what this research might mean for other chronic illnesses too.
That's exactly what I was hoping for. Because this research, it's about so much more than just long COVID.
It really is. It's about pushing the boundaries of what we know about the human body, and who knows what incredible discoveries await us.
Exactly. It's about pushing the boundaries of medicine itself, and that's pretty darn exciting.
I couldn't agree more. And on that note, I want to thank you so much for taking us on this deep dive. This was truly fascinating, and I know I learned a lot, so thank you.
Well, thank you for having me. I always love getting to talk about this stuff.
It shows. And for everyone listening, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the world of long COVID research. It's a complex and evolving landscape, but one thing's for sure, the quest for answers continues, and the future of medicine is looking brighter than ever.